Good morning from Pastor Jonathan, pastor of Robertsdale UMC in Robertsdale, Alabama. I hope that you are doing fine on this Wednesday morning. It's a beautiful morning in Robertsdale. We are continuing. We've been in this COVID-19 quarantine situation for weeks. Today is May the 6th, 2020. And I want you to stay tuned in this video. I'm going to talk about 2 Corinthians chapter 12, which is almost the end of the letter. I'm going to talk about the subject of walking with a limp. And at the end of this video, I'm actually going to completely change the subject and reach out with a technical question for any of you tech-savvy people who can help me navigate something with Facebook Live that I've just run into in the past couple days. So stay tuned for that, and if you can help me, let me know. I want to jump right into it today with 2 Corinthians chapter 12. I'm going to be looking at verses 7 through 10. To keep me from becoming conceited because of these surpassingly great revelations, there was given me a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." When I am weak, then I am strong. It strikes me this morning that there are 2 kinds of people in this world. There are people that acknowledge their weaknesses, and there are people that don't and are in denial about their weaknesses. There is no category of humanity that is absent of weakness. I think we pride ourselves, at least I observe that most cultures throughout history have prided ourselves on hiding our weaknesses and playing to our strengths, or spending time trying to turn our weaknesses into strengths, which is probably even a more futile effort. Paul says he does neither of those. He delights in his weaknesses because it's there that he finds the Lord as his strength. I've heard it said that religion is a crutch. And every time I hear that statement, I think to myself, yeah, but those of us who limp need a crutch. Crutches are for leaning on. Crutches are for depending on if you need the support because you walk with a limp. Paul doesn't talk about a limp here, but he talks about a thorn in the flesh. And he says it's a messenger of Satan to torment him. He pleaded with the Lord 3 times for God to remove it, and God did not. I wonder what this is. People, ever since Paul wrote it, wonder what this is. I think if it mattered what it was, Paul probably would have spelled it out. He was good at that. He could have, but he didn't. I don't think it mattered, and I think in some ways he left it vague so that we could make it personal and ask ourselves, what is our thorn? What is the thing that we would ask the Lord to take away from us? But then when we think about the presence of that thorn still there, we realize our dependence on God and the strength that we find in Him in the midst of our weakness. It reminds me of the story of Jacob in the Old Testament. Jacob had weaknesses, for sure. But Jacob reached this huge turning point in his life where he actually came face to face with God and wrestled all night with an angel in kind of this conversion of character. And he wrestled with the angel and said, "I will not let you go until you bless me." They wrestled all night until daybreak. And finally, the angel touched Jacob's hip and threw it out of socket. And for the rest of his life, Jacob walked with a limp. And it's interesting because it wasn't until Jacob walked with a visible limp that he became the man God always intended for him to become. He went from being Jacob to Israel, and the entire nation of the people of God is named after this man. But before that, he spent his whole life hiding his weaknesses and trying to manipulate them so that he could become strong and self-sufficient and successful in the eyes of the world. He was morally shaky and had ethical relativism. He tricked his brother most often. He even tricked his beloved father a time or 2. But it wasn't until he walked with that limp that he became the man that God always intended him to become. And I'm just reminded today that it is not only in spite of our weaknesses, but even through our weaknesses that God can use us most. That in our place of deepest need, that's where we find His grace most sufficient, and that's where we become located right where God wants us to be. And so I just wonder today, what is your limp? What is your thorn? And could you spend some time actually thanking God for the ways that He shows up and provide strength in the place of weakness in your life. Religion is a crutch, but those who walk with a limp need a crutch, don't we? And it's not really about religion anyway, it's about relationship. I think to myself, if God really cared about Paul, why would he not take this thorn away? He doesn't want his children to be in pain, right? He doesn't want us to suffer. And yet the Christian life, in the New Testament at least, is all about suffering. It's all about persecution. It's all about picking up our cross daily and following Jesus down the path of suffering, that by sharing in his suffering we might also share in his glory. And so I think to myself, our gospel has to do with being self-sufficient and strong and independent. But I don't know that that's the good news that God came to show us in Jesus Christ. I think true wholeness is found not when we are complete without God. True wholeness is found in the place of utter dependence on God. Maybe that's why he doesn't remove the thorn. Maybe because it's not unless we depend on him every minute of every day that we can truly be as strong as he wants us to be, in reliance on the Father, so that we might know his grace in a personal way. I pray that you would spend some time meditating on that today, and I pray that you would know that good news and that God would reveal to you all the ways that he wants his grace to be sufficient for you today, that he would meet you at your place of need, that he would show you your weakness, that you might know his strength. This is Pastor Jonathan from Robertsdale UMC. God bless you today. Grace and peace.